Welcome to the Houston Immigration Legal Services Collaborative Know Your Rights presentation for immigrants and our community. You've probably heard this before. You have the right to remain silent. Or maybe you've also heard this on TV. Your Honor, I plead the Fifth. So those two statements are actually examples of people exercising their rights in the United States under our Constitution. Everybody in the United States has certain rights, no matter what their immigration status, under our Constitution. So, many immigrants have the question of, what do I do if Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, comes to my door? Well, first, we would like you to stay calm. I know it can be hard in a situation where there's somebody that looks like law enforcement at your door, but stay calm so you can remember this advice. And always remember that you have the right to remain silent. This is a right that everybody in the United States has, regardless of their immigration status. You are also not necessarily required to open the door just because somebody from Immigration and Customs Enforcement or the enforcement and removal operations of ICE are at your door. In fact, the only time you would need to open your door is if the ICE officer or officials showed you a warrant signed by a judge. So this is something that they get in court. We would recommend that if they have it, that they slip it under your door so you can read it and make sure that it is actually a warrant and that a judge has signed it and said that ICE has given ICE the permission to enter your home. Another thing we want you to remember is don't feel pressured to sign any document, especially if you do not understand it. We want to make sure that you read anything before you sign it, but also it's often a good idea to consult an attorney before you sign a document. So that's our other piece of advice. You can always ask to speak with a lawyer. Once you do that, they're supposed to allow you to speak with a lawyer who can advise you as to how to handle the situation. So what's a different scenario here? What happens if ICE stops you in public? Well, again, stay calm, and most importantly, do not run. If you run, that's going to make ICE think that there is a reason you're running. So make sure you stay calm and stay in place. Also remember, though, you do have a right to remain silent. We would recommend that you start saying to the ICE officer, "Am I being arrested or detained?" And you should wait for their answer as to whether or not that is the case. If they say you're not being arrested or detained, then you can ask, "Am I free to leave?" And then, depending on what their response, you may walk away. You also have a right under the Constitution to refuse to be searched. So this means that somebody can't search your person or your vehicle unless they have probable cause to do so. Again, do not sign any document, especially if you do not understand it, have not been given a chance to read it, or even, really most important, if you haven't consulted an attorney. So here are a few tips and things to remember. If you are pulled over while driving, you must provide a driver's license to the officer pulling you over. If you are arrested, this is the only time you must give your name, address, and date of birth. That is under Texas law. If you are not arrested or you're not in custody, then you don't have to say anything and you do not actually have to identify yourself. In addition, there is no need to disclose your immigration status to a police officer or a judge. They do not have a right to that information. In fact, in many cases, the prosecutor, who is representing the United States, is the one who must prove that you are not a U.S. citizen or that you don't have legal immigration status in the United States. Don't do their job for them. All right, a few more safety tips. So remember, a Texas law enforcement officer should not stop a person in the street to ask their immigration status unless there is other criminal conduct happening at this time. But if for some reason you do get stopped, it's probably best to not carry any paperwork regarding your immigration status. Instead, make sure that a relative or friend has a copy of any documents. In addition, you do not have to provide a Texas law enforcement officer or prosecutor with paperwork demonstrating your status, including a passport. If you do not have immigration status and are therefore unable to get a driver's license in Texas, we would recommend that you look into getting a Harris County Enhanced Library Card. It has a photo, your full name, and your address. It can serve as a photo ID in many places. We know that there are a lot of things to remember, especially if you are in front of ICE, either in your home or out in public. There are cards that we refer to as the red cards, which let you know what your rights are. So you can know your rights, and then the other side of the card lets you show the card to the agent, the ICE agent that's in front of you, to tell them that you are aware of your rights and there are certain things you will and will not do according to your rights. In addition, workers who are undocumented also have rights. First, you have a right to be paid minimum wage or above. Also, you have a right to overtime for more than 40 hours worked in a week. You have the right to be compensated for any injuries received on the job. You have a right to organize or be part of a labor union. You have the right to be free from unfair labor practices. You have a right to be free from discrimination. You have a right to a safe workplace. And you have a right to report an employer without fear of retaliation. In addition, if you have faced some of these problems, such as unfair labor practices or discrimination or an unsafe workplace, you can report your employer, and there is currently a program for labor-based deferred action. In addition, children in the United States also have a right to education. Undocumented children have the same right as any other child to a primary and secondary education. In Texas, the state requires children between the ages of 6 and 18 to attend school. So a school cannot refuse a child enrollment if they're between the ages of 6 and 18, regardless of their immigration status. You also have certain rights when it comes to healthcare. So there is a federal law, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, known as EMTALA, that says that any emergency room cannot turn a person away if you request treatment, no matter what your immigration status is. In general, you have a right to receive emergency care regardless of your status. You have a right to interpretation in your language so that you understand what is happening when you're receiving care. And you also have a right to decline to answer questions about your immigration status. If you decline to answer, the emergency room or hospital or other provider cannot refuse you service. Again, we want to remind everybody in these times that to beware of fraud and scams in the community. Not all scammers are obvious. They don't always look like scary people hiding behind a computer. They could be people in your neighborhood that you see every day, people that run stores in your neighborhood that you frequent. One thing to keep in mind is that in the United States, a notary public is not the same as a notario in many Latin American countries. In the United States, a notary public can only witness a signature to a document, while in many Latin American countries, notarios are the same as lawyers. That is not the case in the United States. Notary publics do not have formal legal training, nor are they lawyers. We would recommend that you look for attorneys to help you with your immigration case, or organizations that have Department of Justice accredited representatives. This presentation may have raised some more questions. If it does, please feel free to join us on our website to see more materials and information regarding your rights as immigrants in our community.